Darth Vader.
Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, join it or...
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and
Run the data through all possibilities.
Welcome back to Death Battle Debunked. I know it's been a while since we've done one of these. It's been multiple months at this point.
Kept you waiting, huh?
It's May the 4th. I figured I'd do something special for you guys. And today, we're going to cover Darth Vader versus Obito Uchiha. Don't get it twisted. It's not like this is a terrible episode or anything. It's actually pretty good, all things considered. I feel like in a lot of my older videos, I really gave off the impression that I hated Death Battle or something. I got a lot of comments asking me if I hated Death Battle or what was my deal. And I don't hate Death Battle, not at all. I actually really like Death Battle. They were pretty much the main reason for why I got into power scaling, so I owe a lot to them actually. And as for why my older videos on them were so negative, if that is the case, well, like the boss said in Metal Gear Solid 3, values change with the times.
It helps no one to be productive. I believe that we are here implies to some degree that there are forces larger than us. Now we can get into the semanticality.
I know it was only 5 months ago, but who would have guessed I changed a lot in those 5 months. I just don't have the same anger towards them like I used to. Also, this is something that I just realized now while recording, but this is basically the evil version of Obi-Wan versus Kakashi, which they also did an episode on, which is pretty cool.
One time, a droid named I-5 tried to kill Vader with a laser stated to move 300,000 kilometers per second. That's light speed, and Vader easily blocked it.
Now, I am happy that they brought this up, because a lot of people can't seem to wrap their heads around light speed Star Wars for whatever reason, trying to use math and calculations or whatever to get blaster bolts to some abysmal speeds based on what's shown on screen. But in lore, these are actual lasers. They're meant to move at the speed of light, and even random normal people with little to no military training can react to them. And then, obviously, above that, Darth Vader. However, you could potentially get Vader even higher if you assume that he somewhat scales to the speeds of hyperspace, as even normal people like Poe Dameron and Han Solo are able to perfectly time things and react to obstacles in hyperspace. Which, considering the fact that they use hyperspace to travel across a pretty sizable galaxy, would grant Vader some massively faster than light speed scaling.
He's so unstoppable, an assassin droid hired to kill him quit the job because he calculated that Vader was impossible to kill.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
And in Ewok's material from the old Legends canon, a real deep cut, we know, lesser dark side users like the Night Sister Shiral overpowered the Sun Star, an ancient artifact capable of shifting moons, a feat which would require energy worth over 12 septillion tons of TNT.
So the issue here really isn't that they're using the Legends continuity to scale Vader, because I could completely get behind that if they were consistent with it. But that's the thing though, they're not. This is really the only time they bring up the Legends continuity at all, which is really weird because the Legends continuity has its own separate scaling from the movies. So if you wanted this feat from the Legends canon, why not bring over the other feats from the same canon? Death Battle could have made their video so much more airtight if they just didn't bring the Legends canon up at all. That way they wouldn't need to take into account any of the other Legends stuff. And they show a potential planetary feat for Vader later when he survives an entire planet being destroyed. So this wasn't even that important in the first place. If you really needed a calc to prove planetary Vader or something, you could have just used the Death Star. Darth Vader in the first movie even says that destroying a planet is insignificant compared to the power of the Force. The Death Star is actually able to destroy planets to a dwarf star level extent, or in other words has enough energy behind it to destroy a small star. And Vader calling this power insignificant is actually very telling for his scaling, which is also backed up in all of the guidebooks for Star Wars as well, with Vader routinely being called the strongest force in the Empire. So it's not like they couldn't have used this and foregone the Legends continuity in the first place. Yeah, I do think it is likely that even the current Disney canon would scale above the Sunstone regardless. Just take the Sith Darth Nihilus from the Legends continuity as an example. This is a guy that's hyped up for just being able to eat entire planets, and most people would be willing to accept that even the current Disney versions of Vader and Palpatine would scale above that. So they could have just argued that even though it is a different continuity, Vader should scale above it regardless. But they didn't do that, and instead they cherry-picked a feat from the Legends continuity and completely forgot about everything else that Vader did in the expanded material, which I can only assume was an attempt to appeal to people that don't really know that much about Star Wars power scaling, and wouldn't really be on board with the idea of Darth Vader being stronger than the Death Star. Like, that's probably a hard sell to a casual Star Wars fan.
Yeah, because he really wants to kill Palpatine.
Death Battle, why? Why would you ever want to bring this up? You do realize that Anakin, in that moment in time, was controlling two sides of a universal construct, right? Like, the brother and the sister are literal physical embodiments of the light and the dark side of the Force, and Anakin being able to overpower it grants him some pretty crazy scaling that Obito really doesn't have. Not only was Anakin amped during this moment, so his normal state wouldn't even scale, but again, it's a much better feat than literally anything shown in Naruto, save maybe some higher interpretations of Kaguya's realms. So like, why would you ever bring it up?
He recruited a number of rogue shinobi to form the Akatsuki terrorist group and kicked off Ninja World War IV, all to revive the monstrous Ten Tails.
So, I'm gonna rip the band-aid off right now. They gave Obito the Ten Tails. And like, why? Do you know how much prep time went into preparing the Ten Tails for Obito to use as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki? Not only that, do you remember how much time it took Madara to prep all of that? Not even Obito himself. Like, the Ten Tails is not something that Obito just has on command. It requires both assistance and prep time, both of which are things Death Battle infamously does not allow. Look at Shadow vs. Vegeta or Eggman vs. Bowser.
And the devastating Tailed Beast Bomb. Dispersing that much mass within a fraction of a second must have yielded a kinetic energy worth over 13 septillion tons of TNT.
So, I don't know exactly how Death Battle calced this. Maybe they did really assume it took place within a fraction of a second or something. So, I did what I usually do, and I went online and I looked for calcs, right? Large island level to multi-continental. I don't know. I don't think you needed to highball the fuck out of blowing up a mountain to match Darth Vader's, like, mid-planetary ends.
He summoned the God Tree and prepared to launch the Infinite Tsukuyomi.
Again, Death Battle. It took time. The Infinite Tsukuyomi took prep time from both Madara and Obito. Like, this isn't a move that they can just pull out of nowhere instantly on the battlefield.
KO! Well, Vader may have been able to beat Obi-Wan, but he just couldn't handle Obi-2.
A two-pack of ass!
Both Darth Vader and Obito were roughly even in power and speed, so it truly came down to their skill and arsenals.
I mean, I don't really know, man. If the difference is an entire Yoda ton of TNT, like, I'm pretty sure it's not close.
Plus, thanks to his wide array of jutsu, Obito would eventually overwhelm Vader. While chakra may normally be a limited source of energy, unlike the Force, the Ten Tails provided Obito with an unlimited supply.
Even the manga panel you are showing on screen right now says almost infinite amount of chakra. So Obi-Wan versus Kakashi logic should come into play. Vader would likely outlast Obito.
The winner is Obito Uchiha.
Overall, it's a pretty fine episode. This is probably one of the best death battles that we've looked at on the channel, but obviously it's still got some issues. It wasn't bad at all. The folks at Death Battle did a pretty good job, all things considered. I mean, you can't really expect everyone to have some sort of deep dive encyclopedia-esque knowledge on Star Wars or Naruto, so I can overlook a couple mistakes here and there. In my opinion, though, Vader easily takes this. I'm not going to pretend that Obito doesn't have his win cons. He definitely does, but Vader's just simply stronger and faster, and more than likely Obito wouldn't really be able to get those win cons off in time, but that's just my 2 cents. Anyway, I'm tired. I'm wasted. So, good night.
We already know the smell of the game!
Big Chungus lives on as the dominant meme.